Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I think that's the first time. How does it feel to have this great audience give us such a nice, warm welcome?
Lovely, as always. Thank you all for coming. Gosh, I wish I had pie for all of you. Sorry, I know you guys are like, well, I wish you did too.
It is good pie.
Sorry, yeah.
So at Startup Grind, we start our interviews a little bit different. We like to go back to when you were a sweet little girl and hear about what life was like for you when you were a child.
I had, probably like everybody, I grew up like in the 60s and 70s and was looking back, it was just a great time to grow up. We didn't have all the technology, which is lovely, and then on the other side, it's not so lovely, I think, especially for children. But, so I grew up in Lansing, and I have a twin sister and 3 older brothers, like the video said, and came from a long line of farmers, and so I would go to my grandparents' farms and my aunt's farms and spend a week or two and just be in love. Like someday I have to have a farm of my own, and which I do now, a little farmette is what I call it. But and I just loved the cooking, the baking, the being in the kitchen and watching them, and I loved the whole hostess deal when my mom and dad had people over for dinner, and I just wanted to do that. And at the time, maybe I'm going on.
No, this is good.
Okay.
Gives us context around
okay.
how you were built.
Then when I see this, I'm really jumping. But I do want to say on that little video, you see my writing because it doesn't really explain it. But did you see my writing? And they kind of. And I don't think you can really read it, but it was I found it probably about 10 years ago, right when I was deciding to open the shop, but I found it in one of my mom's boxes, and it was a little biography of Linda Hundt, and it said, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be? And the first wish was, which again was kind of hard to read, but it said to get rid of all the meanness in the world and the murders and the hate. And then the second one was to every day eat all the sweets that I can in the world. And the number 3 was to have 1 million more wishes. So I thought that was so ironic that in 7th grade I get to do that, that I really am following my dreams. I try to do in our way, get rid of meanness and yucky hate, and I definitely get to eat sweets every day, all day, so it's just kind of an ironic thing. So I think I've always told people that, especially my girls at the shop that are in high school or college or and whatever age, that who you are is who you are, and that's who you're supposed to be. And God gave you gifts, whether you believe it or not, He did, she did, whatever. And the important thing is to embellish and believe in your gifts and use them. And it's such an amazing transformation when you get to do that. You're yourself every day, but you're doing something with it, hopefully in your business. And I think when you combine the two, it's living a life that you've always dreamed of. And whether it's, making pies or, doing computer work or volunteer work or whatever it is that it rings true to your heart. Sorry.
Computer work is more fun than making pies, though, right?
For you, maybe. No, not for me.
When you were little, did you have any entrepreneurial influences in your family?
No, but I used to play that I was the Avon lady, and I would make little Avon powders and little things, and then I would make little cakes and sell them out front. We lived in a neighborhood that not too many people ever went up, but and then actually when I was at MSU is when I started my first business that's still around, which is really exciting. It's called Tisket Tasket, and it's a gift basket business. And I started, I think I was a junior or senior, and they didn't have anything like this back then, so I don't even know how I did it. Because there was no computers to Google. I was still typing, and remember? I mean, there wasn't anywhere to really go besides the phone book. But it's still here. I sold it after a few years because I wanted to do more. So I've always had an ADD mind of crazy, ideas and things where it's kind of manic. I get up in the middle of the night and write from recipes to new ideas, and that's always been me. And when I was at Michigan State, I wanted to be a home ec teacher because that was, the Donna Reed and the, for some of this generation, Mrs. Brady or Alice, and those are just not good. If you ever get to see Donna Reed or June Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver, or someone that, I wanted to be like a part-time stay-at-home mom that also had her own business and got to wear really, really cute clothes, which is my favorite part. And then got to bake and, make everybody happy. I mean, that was really my goal. And I still did that through, for 20 years in my own way. I did it when I worked in the governor's office. I always brought baked goods in, and I hosted huge parties always for my husband's family's huge and our family. And so I always did it, but I wasn't able to do it for a job. And at MSU, a business major was overwhelming because I was always bad at math, and I'm like, it's so different now. Back then a business major meant that you were going to probably go into finance or something like that, and again, those weren't my talents. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't be a business major. So I have a long line of teachers in my family, like my parents and my grandparents and my sisters and brothers. And so I went into teaching and graduated, and I didn't love that. I still love the kids, and I always take what I think is really important, that we always take every job we've ever had, even if you're mopping the floor or you're teaching or you're babysitting, to take something from that. And teaching really helped me raise my children. I teach baking classes for tons of people for 10 years, and that's always helped too, so it was never a waste. And I just never think anything that we do is a waste. And so people always say, I graduated, I never used my degree, I did, but that wasn't a waste. You learn things about things that you wouldn't have learned, and you met people, and every single job I've ever had, when I put all this together to develop Sweetie-licious, helped me. From writing press releases and all the things I used to do in the governor's office, from sales, from when I was at McDonald's, all those things have helped me, start my business and keep it going. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
When
you were little and you were doing the Avon cakes, was there anything that you learned that helped you later when you had that experience?
Well, it's really funny. My dad, everyone remember, there used to be televisions in big wooden cabinets. And my dad had one, he had all the parts out of it, and it was down in the basement. And so there was like a little cabinet door, so it was my little bakery. Sometimes it would be my bakery, and that was the oven, and sometimes it would be my little Avon where I would be doing chemicals and recipes. And I knew that I loved creating, and that was, I remember watching this movie, it was a Barbra Streisand movie, and it was with Ryan O'Neal, and she was a perfume person, and she created all these perfumes, and I thought, oh, that would be a really cool job, but how do I do that? So yeah, I think, again, everything that, like, who you are is who you are, and our job here is to only make ourselves better, I believe, and when you can do that through your work, it's just a beautiful thing.
When did you know that you wanted to open a pie shop?
When I was on my honeymoon in 1985, so we just had our 30th anniversary, yay! We took our girls to San Francisco and just had this wonderful time, just like 2 weeks ago. So, but we were high school sweethearts, and so I was real young, and we went to Cape Cod, and there was a little pie shop called Pie in the Sky, and I walked in, and it really, to be honest, it really wasn't very cute, you know. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do, but I would do it, make it so much cuter. and their pie was delicious, so I don't mean anything against them. But it really inspired me of, like, this is what I always loved to make pies, and I just wanted to do better, because my mom always was a huge pie baker. And sometimes for her church things, she was a high school English teacher, and she wouldn't have time to make 2 pies, so there'd be like the pie in the refrigerator again, you know. She made a pineapple cheesecake pie that we have at the shop still. It's getting really popular too for some reason, and it's so good, I'm so glad. But there'd be a big sign, you know, there were 5 kids that would say, "Do not eat, this is for, you know, her church social or whatever." And I'm like, "Mom, why didn't you just make 2 pies?" So I always tell people in baking class, if you're baking, you know, you always share. So you just never have just one for you. You have to share it. But on my honeymoon, I remember saying out loud to my husband, "This is what I want to do someday." And 20 years later, I did.
Why didn't you do it right when you got back from your honeymoon? Why did you wait 20 years?
I think there's you know, my husband had a job that I mentioned in the video at a business that had failed. So, and I happened to be pregnant with our first daughter, and so I needed a job right away. I was substitute teaching at that point, and I had just sold my business, my first business, and thought, what am I going to do? We need benefits. And so I got a job in the governor's office because it had benefits, and not for any other reason, because I'm not a political person, and I hated that part of the job because it was always, you know, somebody against the other one instead of let's just do this together, and it's way worse now than it was then. But so I always loved it. I worked in the Republican office, but I was out front, so a lot of Democrats came, and I'm not either, so it was like I met all, you know, the Speaker of the House, and of course I already knew the governor, but I had all of these friends that I had met, and lobbyists from both sides, which in turn helped me when I opened up Sweetie-licious, because they would order things, and when we had Mitt Romney happened to stop by the shop a few years ago, which I, you know, explained I do not want this as a campaign stop, but they had said that they wanted a piece of Americana, of the Midwest, and one of the guys that was on his campaign team thought of Sweetie Pie, Sweetie-licious. So they stopped there, and it ended up being a week of nightmare of Secret Service, and it was really crazy. But again, it was a nice life experience, so I'm really glad we did it. And but that was really hard, because I would have Obama at my shop in a minute, because that's just what our shop is about. And I had lots of people. It was kind of when, you know, Facebook started, saying they'd never come to my shop again. I mean, these unbelievably mean things. And we ended up being on the front of the New York Times, the Washington Post. They grabbed, because this was his biggest press conference ever, happened to be at our shop. So CNN News and New York Times, all these people are in my little shop in front taking all these pictures. So here we are, you know, on it, and it said our name and my name and Sweetie-licious, and I couldn't get out of bed, because I couldn't believe people wrote what they wrote, and it would be kind of like me asking someone at the door, well, what political affiliation are you? Or what church do you go to? You know, and it hurt me, you know, greatly of again, not knowing backstory, of not knowing, of judging before, you know, that it wasn't a political event, and I've never even said who I voted for, and I'm not sure whatever. But the point is that that's where the social media and all of that has kind of gone a little bit crazy. So it took me, I do have depression issues, so that took me the day to get out of bed and stop crying and then be happy that we were on the Washington Post and ignore the haters. So
How did you deal with that, to be able to get back out of bed when it impacted you so much like that?
Gotta keep going on. So I've always had that problem, and it's an emotional one for me, and it's very clear, and it's whoever has ever had any kind of mental issues, it's very hard, because basically you have some voice in your head saying you suck, you're the worst business person, you're a horrible person. So I have to keep praying against that, because when it comes, it's really really hard, because then I don't feel like I'm worthy to be anyone's leader, and certainly not worthy to be here, speaking to all of you. So so I do have that, but on the other hand, like by the next day, I get filled with my energy and my joy and God's joy and my mission, and we keep going, and it's a good day again. So.
Do you have any advice for people in the audience, or if they have to have a tough meeting, or if they lose a contract or something like that, and they don't want to face the world? Do you have any tips for them on how to handle that?
Yeah, I had something happen yesterday with some of the Williams-Sonoma Cross, and I've had a lot of stress throughout this whole life of Sweetie-licious. So, I've done acupuncture, and I believe that it's, our body and our lives that we have to take care of. And you have a spiritual side, and you have a whole body that you need to, and you have a mind with your brain that goes to your business, and you have a heart and all of that hopefully goes to your business too, and your customers, and then you have your family. So so it's really hard sometimes to balance that, and for me, it's a spiritual thing that I have to get grounded again and go back to my mission. And my mission is, making pies and loving every single person throughout the door. That's what I felt happened to me when I had my spiritual epiphany, that I was supposed to do this. So mine goes back to, I don't know anyone's backstory, and I don't need to know. All I want and all I'm here to do, which is what I always did but didn't know it, is when someone comes up to me or on the street or in my shops, is that I'm supposed to spread love, and I'm just supposed to accept them and hug them and make them feel cherished, because at home they may not be, and at least at the shop, that's my missionary work. And then I get to do that through the food, because as we know, food is connected in our brains to emotion, and hopefully it's home style, and it's made like your grandma or your mom did. I said that once, and some guy interrupted in a sweet way, but he's like, my mom's cooking sucked. So I definitely, and so did my grandma's. And I was like, okay, your aunt? Did you have anybody in your family? But so I go back to that and realize that that's what my mission is. So I always tell people, whether they have a business mission or not, they should have their own personal mission of, why am I here? And that's kind of what I went through before I opened the shop. I worked at the governor's office and had lovely friends and did a fine job with what I had, but it wasn't using my gifts, and it wasn't doing what I was supposed to. So when I had the epiphany, I came out of nowhere, and I felt in my head, I'm supposed to love people. Well, certainly God, it wasn't Charlton Heston or anything weird like that, but it was this, well, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with that? I thought I did that. But that was up to me to connect the dots and to go further and to make it the way it was. And it was very clear in my head that it was supposed to be big. And so people will say, am I surprised or anything like that? I'm not, because I worked really hard for that to happen. So Sweetie-licious can love people, and that's what I'm here to do. And that's why I think it's been so successful, because a lot of things have happened to me that it just were like little miracles, and they still happen.
Having that purpose, was it easy to start a business?
I think it made it easier for me because I was like driven. I've always been very driven in, I'm not a type A personality, so I'm kind of a little bit odd in that way, but I always want everyone to feel good and be happy, and I wanted to do a business that did that, because that was very innate for me, and that was easy for me. And baking and cooking was really easy for me. The business part was not easy for me, and that was the part that always scared me to death. So all those years, I had collected things for my bakery someday in our barn. And we had bought a farmette that was, people used to tease me in the governor's office. Everyone's seen Green Acres with, what was her name? Lisa. And she would be all dressed up on this old farm, and our farm really did look like that. But I'd go into a meeting and I'd be in heels and this outfit with chicken poop on my heel, oh dear, and from feeding the chickens in the morning. But that was a dream, and that also helped start me. We had one reason I loved it so much was, the area and the school district, and then it had blackberry bushes, raspberry bushes, apple trees, pear trees, peach trees. What else am I missing? I think that's all the fruit. So I was canning and cooking and baking. And then we had a big garden. So I would get home from work and I just started on making jam and canning peaches and making new dessert ideas. And so that kind of unknowingly really helped me hone my skills. And then what was the question you had again? Am I saying?
Was it easy to start your business?
Oh, so from there, I kept feeling great about that end. And so after 9/11, ironically, I remember coming home from Grand Rapids, and I went to pick up the girls, and everybody remembers where they were and how horrible it was. Are we going to live till tomorrow? I mean, there was all those questions, and it really, made me think I can't do a job that's not me anymore. So John and I talked, and it was a huge sacrifice for me to quit. It wasn't like, we went down to one car, and no vacations, and it was really simple living on the farm. I used to still teach the girls in the summer. We have a little granary that I made into a little playhouse and a schoolhouse, and and then I kept honing my skills and going through, and by then there was some internet. There was internet, but it was not like it is now. I don't know if Google was there, but I could definitely search things. So I searched, how to do this through the business, and then I found out about the Small Business Technology Center, and I still work with Tom Donaldson there. So it's been 13 years. And I just saw him last week, and he really helped me with the business plan part. So the marketing part and all of that, and the television, all of that was easy for me. I wrote stories on each of my pies, and that was really important for me because, and you heard about the Tom's Pie on the video, but I wanted these people in my life that were really important to me and other people, and they weren't presidents and they didn't cure cancer, but they led really fruitful, beautiful lives. And I wanted to write their little story down of what they contributed. And so I would write about Aunt Ruby's butterscotch praline, and I would write about her hard work ethic. and how important that is in life. And I think that I got that. And, I loved her. I would go to her house and she would open up this closet and there'd be like 25 quilts, and she'd say, "This is what I did this winter." I'm like, oh my gosh. And we're sitting there watching, now Game of Thrones, and, Aunt Ruby was like sewing all these quilts for people that she gave away. So, and you learn about Tom. Tom was an inspiration in his leadership and making people feel good, and he started the SWAT team for state police. And you read about my mom and my dad, and just people that again needed to be written about, and my Aunt Margie. And so I know they're all smiling. Some of them, most of them have passed, but smiling in heaven, thinking, "Oh my gosh, everyone's loving my Aunt Ruby's butterscotch pie," or my Grandma Farrell. "Oh my gosh, Williams-Sonoma people are loving my caramel apple pie." And I thought that was really important, that you had a provenance with the pie, and I still feel real strongly about that, because I wanted my pie shop to be different. I wanted it to not just be retro and all that, because as a gimmick, but truly that is who I am. And if you walk in my house or any three of the shops, you'll see that. I always thought I was born the wrong generation, but I think that it helps me and has helped my shop, because when you go in the shop and you hear Frank Sinatra or Nat King Cole, and you smell the molasses cookies, you do go to a time that's lost. I don't have Wi-Fi at my shop, sorry. I don't, and it's because, for a reason, I'm not open on Sundays, and that's a reason. I have to be at one of my shops in Grand Rapids, and I fought it. But I do that so everyone has a day off. Everyone has that day for their families. Family is really important to me, and I want to spread the importance of that, which is why I wrote the cookbook, and why I do speaking events, and why Sweetie-licious was born. So the business part, back to your question, Tom really helped me with that. And I've always had, and they'll tell you this in anything, whatever you're not good at, get someone to help you with that. So the very first person I ever hired was a bookkeeper. Like, help me. And then I would go with Tom. He was free, and so it was wonderful. He could help me with my books. And so I always had that on, so I could do the media part and everything that I was good at.
There might be people out in the audience who are thinking about starting a business or have been thinking about it for a long time, and it's hard to leave their paycheck for that. What would you say to somebody who's on the fence and thinking about it? What do they know when it's the right time?
Yeah, I know. That's always a tough one, especially for men with families that are the breadwinner, or a woman that's the breadwinner. It's hard to do that. In my case, it was a huge sacrifice. So, as far as money goes, I remember charging groceries. I had my own little credit card, and I had done Arbonne. So, and I would bring I'm just remembering all this. I would bring my pies to Arbonne. So they would buy the pies, and people would get to know who I was. I also did Pampered Chef, and I would bring my pies to the Pampered Shop, and so we would have a little extra money. So, you have to be willing, I think, to sacrifice the extra, things in our lives that we think are important, but that really aren't. We never had cable TV. PBS is still my favorite station, and we do now, but we didn't then. But some of those things that you can sacrifice, and then making sure that your plan is solid. I really believe in that. I did my homework. I made sure that my recipes were good and great, but I still work on those. I still hone on. I'm never gonna, I always told my daughters and everybody at the shop that today was a great day, but tomorrow's gonna be better, and we'll do better tomorrow. And I think that kind of philosophy always is good, and it's not a disappointing way of like, I didn't do good enough today. It's just that tomorrow's going to be a better day, and I'll do better. So it's just kind of how you look at it. And there's lots of mistakes that happen at the shop. You know, cherries can be burned, and, you know, that's $50 down the drain. And when you first start, you know, I didn't pay myself for a couple years, which some people aren't able to do, and that was really hard. So I would bring home, I'd bring home, like, the cherry lemon bomb cookie that fell on the floor, you know, and I would bring it home to our family, and I'd put it on our little dining room table, and look what Mommy brought for dinner, and we go, yay, and we cut it in fours, and I'll have it, and, you know, I think it helps keep people slim, too, as far as that goes. But it also, you know, you have to make those sacrifices, and you have to be willing to do that. And I think the biggest thing, the most important thing that I can say is whatever you're planning to do is that you have to love it. Because it, you know, I didn't have a third child, and it was because Sweetie-licious is my third baby. And, you know, my girls call it their little sister. Because it became that, and it was a group project. I mean, we talked about it. I told them, the girls, that, you know, our vacations would be slim, and everyone was on board. And throughout the years, friends and family helped build the shop, because I couldn't get a loan and all of those types of things. So it's always about work. So if you hate what you're doing and you're working all the time doing it, what a horrible life, you know. And I do remember, you know, working for the governor and loving the people so much. But when it came right down to it, that, you know, I'm not a policy person. I was not the right person for that job. And the governor, I have all the governors coming into the shop, and I always tell Governor Engler, I think he shouldn't call him anymore. But anyway, just because, you know. But anyway, the point is that, you know, who you are, again, is who you are. So when you find that, you know, your work, I do work a lot. And I found this year that I had to stop because I did have a crash. And this is the first speaking gig I've done. And I talked to David for a long time because I literally couldn't talk and I couldn't speak, and so I'd been really silent on Facebook, and actually have a hard time writing still, because it was all too much. And I think you have to figure out that balance of when it's too much, and then again have help, or, you know, find help and in ways that can help you. And one of the problems is that, you know, when they want the owner, you know, I'm the owner, and since I do TV, you know, there's a lot of that only can be me. So my daughter Ellie is a food scientist, and she graduated from Michigan State in food science, and she's been working for ConAgra and the big corporations in Omaha and St. Louis, and she quit in June to come do her dream and work at Sweetie-licious and help me and be me when I can't be me. And it just happens to be that she looks exactly like me, so I'm never going to age. It's really great. She's oh my God, it looks like her. Well, I mean, she's definitely has, you know, a way cuter body, but she's adorable, and she's already helping us with R&D with the Williams-Sonoma contract, and helping in every way. So that's another, you know, little God wink that helped me know that I can continue to do some of these things and have 3 shops and maybe write the next cookbook and do some of the things, because I wasn't so overwhelmed, you know. It had become bigger than what I could handle. And when I had just the cute little pie shop in the whole wide world, I was there every day, and I knew all my customers. That's how I know Stephanie. And then the farther you get away from that, the harder that it is. So I am constantly doing, you know, business things, and on the, you know, so I only get to go in once a week right now, and then as I get better, I'll go twice. But I still have to go to Grand Rapids. So there's a lot to the to the expansion part, but the most important thing is to love it, and then the second most important thing is to balance your life, and so that's the thing that I haven't done so well on, and I'm working on. And then the third thing is that you have to know that you have to be a hard worker. Just have to be. If you're not a hard worker, then it won't work, because you can't expect. I just mopped the floor. I went to, I mopped the floor. I, decorate the shop still and all the cute things, which is really fun for me. I make pies. I deal with any of the big companies that I have to deal with. I also have people that do that, a lot of that things, but I'm never ever going to feel that I'm too big or too important to do that, because I'm not. Everybody on our team is important, whether you're the counter girl, which I love being counter girl personally, or you're mopping the floor, doing the dishes, or you're the administrator. They're all really important jobs, and I am so thankful for every single person who's on my team, because I wouldn't be here without them. They're all my best of friends, and I can't say enough of how hard they work.
Well, sounds like a sweet place to work.
I think so, cute.
Before we get into the expansion, in the early days, it sounded like you said there were a couple years you went without taking a salary.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's some people in the audience who have started a business and they haven't taken a salary in a while. How should people be thinking about to stop and get a job, or to keep going and persevere because success is on the other side of that mountain?
Yeah. I think people would be shocked at how much I make right now still. I give everybody more money that works for me than what I make. And I do that for a couple different reasons. I do it because it's not about the money for me, and we still, have a lovely life, but I'm not here to be a millionaire. I'm here for the mission of loving people through our baked goods, and people having an experience when they come to the shop. I built the shop and do it as a destination for that. So those are my eyes on the prize. Understandably, there's other people that, their eyes on the prize is, having I don't even know what fancy car, Lamborghini or whatever it is, or don't get me wrong, I still want a pink little cottage up north, and, I still have lots of dreams, but I want good help. I can't do what I do with people, so I've had most of my people that have been, my bakers have been there 10 years. We have our 10-year anniversary. We're going to celebrate it in October. But I think it's really, really, really important to have good help and people that, and for you to be the, mentor, so they see you working just as hard as they are. They don't want to, personally, it would be really hard to say, you're working tonight or working Saturdays. I worked every Saturday for years, and I just stopped working them since but I would always leave like at 11 or so I had the rest of the day, and then I had Sunday off. And, we missed tailgates and a lot of those things, but that was a sacrifice that I had to make for the shop to succeed, and now I have other people working the Saturdays too, but I'm trying to figure that out so everybody, it's even, and no one ever saw me like, bye, you guys work really hard. They saw that I worked just as hard as they did, and I can't express how important that is. Until I retire, I will do that, unless health, says otherwise, but they have to believe in you as a person and have to like you as a person. So I think we've all worked for people that you don't like for whatever reason, and probably it was because they didn't treat you the way that you should be treated, and that's with respect. And I always try to do little gifts for everybody, and thank you notes to them. We do it. I just did a big summer party and made all the food at our farm, and it was old-fashioned. It was so cute. We had water balloon tosses, and then I could go on. No, I won't. But I do a big turkey Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm going to do one this year and in Grand Rapids. And I just make everything and just to say thank you. And sometimes gifts and gratitude doesn't have to be money. I think it's in how you treat your team. So that was the question so I think that's a really tough question to answer, and it's one that you have to find yourself. If your belief and dream is, that important to you, and you have to have your family support you in every way that they can. And I knew when I was asking John, my husband, to do that was hard, because we had gone bankrupt. It was awful. And I hated that. I always thought my poor little daughter, Ellie, was going to be sad because I cried, so much through her pregnancy. But she's the happiest girl ever, so yay. But finding a plan to do that, whether you can, again, I used to work 2 jobs sometimes, and I only did it like every other week, so I wasn't away from my girls. So I really tried to balance, sacrifices and dream of this business I want, next to reality, next to how do we mix those so I can make this work. And I think that part of entrepreneurship is really important, is how do I make this work, no matter what. So when Williams-Sonoma called, they were on my business plan. I was telling David, my business plan is I wanted shops all over, and I want to be able to make pies for Williams-Sonoma, and I had all these dreams. And then the reality of it is, well, how am I going to do this in this little pie shop? And I want to do that someday, but I don't want to do that now. But I did write this cookbook, so I thought, well, why don't I send them a cookbook? And I had, through my publisher, had gotten some contacts, and I thought, I'll just send them a cookbook and a pie, and my little story, and that'll be great, and maybe they'll like it, and they'll have the cookbooks in their stores. So it was December a few years ago, and I get this call from Williams-Sonoma, from Josephine, and she said, I know you don't know who I am, but this is who I am, and the president wanted me to call you. And I was so confused. It was real busy, it was December, and there was people in the shop. President of who? The president of the United States. I didn't hear the Williams-Sonoma, and she goes, no, president of Williams-Sonoma. And I'm like, that was way bigger. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And so I went in the back of the shop, and I said, oh, you loved my cookbook. And she said, we did, we really did, but we're not really ready for that yet. You have to be a bigger name. But your pie went to me, then it went to, some other spot in the chain of command, and it went all the way to the president, and he wants you to be our exclusive pie baker. And I remember just crying. I was like, oh my gosh. But how do we do that? I hung up. I said, okay, just let me get through Christmas, and then I couldn't say no. You don't have that opportunity. And at the time I had a partner. I had just gotten a partner. I had one for a year and a half, and he was my capital end. So he helped with the expansion of the other shops, and he was wonderful, and he was from DeWitt, and he was a huge Sweetie-licious fan. And he unexpectedly passed away in February from an accident. He was 43. So it was crushing for me to think of his family, and then of course, secondly, of my friendship with him. He was like a little brother, and then now I have 3 shops, and I don't have a capital person. What am I going to do? So I know I just keep going off into different, I am so sorry. This is how I am, though. We'll be at the shop since like 5 in the morning, we'll start baking. And one of my best friends bakes with me, and she's the same way. So we'll go from one, and then we'll start lemon meringue, and then talk about that. And then people around us are always so confused, because then we automatically go back to that same subject. And my family deals with it. But I do think it has to do a little bit of that creativity deal, because my mind is always Do you guys get that? Where your mind's always going in little ADD in areas?
Well, we're going to take questions. People can line up over there. And while we're getting the questions set up, Linda, what have you been most proud of that you've accomplished?
That's really sad, hard for me. Just that what people write in my books or write on our Facebook, that they feel loved or special. And some of the stories, I'll have to tell you the story because I've told you that I had a lot of little miracles that happen, and this is one of them, and it's in my cookbook. This was several years ago. I started on my back porch, and I have an old fridge and an old pie safe, and people used to come to my door, or I would have them at the farm market. I started the farm market and do it when I quit my job because I wanted to do something for the community. And then my pie shop, or the pie thing, started taking off weirdly, and so then when the opportunity to have this shop, I didn't talk about this, so just to say it in a little couple sentences, I used to get my hair cut at my pie shop when it was a hair salon. And I said, I would be in a shop just like this, and I'd go, wow, this is gonna be my pie shop someday. I love it, this is the only cute place. And I really meant it. And then when the girl was moving her pie shop and I was on the corner selling my pies out of my truck, and she said, if you're really serious about that, because I'm gonna be renting out the building. And I was like, oh, okay. So how am I going to have my pie shop that I've dreamed of? And so I tried to get loans, and we couldn't, and then we got the home equity loan. So I always say when a lot of people get a family room or a swimming pool, we got a pie shop. So, and then from there, my family helped do all the carpentry work, and I had collected things throughout the years for my pie shop there in my barn. So there was an old display case on the side of the road once. I'm like, are you kidding me? So we threw it in the back of the station wagon we had then, and all sorts of things. So when I started the shop, I had a lot of the interior stuff all done. The counter and a trophy case was where all my pies are now. Based from there, I had to go to the next step, and there was a lot of praying and a lot of, okay, this is a destination. This is what makes my shop different. This is the experience, and that is what I'm most proud of. It doesn't matter how many things we've won, and I mean, the Steve Harvey show was awesome, and the Best in Show that you saw was awesome, and winning Best Pie in Michigan they're all lovely and they mean so much to me, but having people connect and feel something that they don't feel anymore, I mean, that, I feel like Walt Disney, who's my other mentor, and Abe Lincoln, but Abe Lincoln has his own pie, by the way. I can't believe I've never made one for Walt Disney. I should, though. But that part of the experience is really what I am most proud of. And so probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I got in at the shop at 4:30 or 5, and I was baking by myself back then. And I looked on our little order sheet, and there was, which is really funny, Mary and I were just talking about it, a rhubarb custard pie, which is my absolute favorite pie of all time. And we have a rhubarb patch, by the way, at the shop, and it's our family's favorite. But we hadn't started getting rhubarb from our farmer yet. And one of the high schools accidentally had written it down, and I'm like, shoot. So I called my husband, and I said, honey, do we have any rhubarb in our patch yet? And he said, yeah. And I go, do you think there's enough for a pie? And he said, I think so. So he stopped by the shop, brought it, and I'm cutting it up. This is when we were a lot slower, by the way. I mean, I couldn't do this now probably. But I cut it up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's enough for 2 rhubarb custard pies. I'm so taking this home to my family. And my mom and dad, my dad's passed now, but they lived close, and my mom still lives there, so I had them over for dinner all the time. So I called my dad, and I said, we're gonna have rhubarb custard, which was his favorite. And then a couple minutes later, this middle-aged woman and her mother came running into the shop. Where are we? Where are we? And I was like, well, you're in DeWitt at the cutest little pie shop in the whole wide world. Where did you want to be? And they're like, Saginaw. We're supposed to be in Saginaw. And I'm like, oh, okay, well. told him the directions on how to get back, and I go, why don't you just sit, down for a little bit? And I had the quiche just coming out of the oven, and so I said, would you like a piece of quiche? And there's coffee right there, and she said, yes. I haven't had quiche in a long time. So they both were, sitting there with the quiche, and my pies were in the oven, the rhubarb custard, I just had taken that out, both of them. And then I went and talked to them, and Frank Sinatra was just beautifully in the background. He was croning, and then I said, how's your quiche? And she said, wonderful. And then she came back up to the counter, and she said, I've just been, I believe it was Kismet. I believe I was supposed to be here. She said, I feel so much better. And I'm like, oh, that's why I'm here, And we're hugging each other, and she said, I haven't been back to Michigan in 35 years. And I'm like, this is the older woman speaking. And I said, oh my gosh. She goes, I live in Florida. And she said, the only reason I'm here is that my brother is dying. And so he only has like a week or so to live, and I want to be with him. And he has come to visit me, but I haven't been back here. And she said, I've been sitting, eating my quiche and looking at all of your beautiful things here and looking at the pies. And she said, oh my gosh, I'll take a pie to my brother. And she sat there and remembered what his favorite pie was. And she said, you don't happen to have a rhubarb custard pie here today? And I started crying immediately and hugging her, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to have one, but I am supposed to have one. Of course I do. And I gave her, of course, ours and told her the story, and she's crying, and her daughter's crying, and we're all just sitting in this 3-person hug at the pie shop. And immediately again, and those things happen, and I could actually write a book if I ever get to the other cookbooks about the stories that people tell me and how the shop has made them better or changed them in some way or inspired them in some way. And now I get that from the cookbook. And that's what I'm most proud of in my team and our delicious stuff. But making a difference in people's lives, there's nothing beats it.
That feels good. Melissa?
Hi.
I'm really excited you're here.
I'm
my
excited
grandma
you're here.
my grandma and her best friend have been going to Sweetie-licious for years. They love it. She raves about it.
Thank you. Thank them.
I also have never had your pie until like 2 weeks ago. I had it at the farmer's market. And I don't like pie, and I love your pie. So it was a life-changing experience, I guess.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So my question is, I've never been to your DeWitt location. I have been to your Grand Rapids location a lot. And when you're standing there, you feel like it's local. You feel like it's very welcoming. So you have multiple locations, but you still have that local feel.
Oh, I hope so.
How do you
means a
do
lot to
that?
me. Well, I do have an antiquing garage sale gene. And so when you see all the pink, I just got the cutest real pink stove for my kitchen, you guys, my dream. Like a real pink kitchen, like gas stove for my kitchen. I'm not, and maybe it'll go to Sweetie Pie sometime, but so I think that helps, that you see the old antiques, that the old rolling pins and the old stoves and things that are, baking that people used. I can't pass a rolling pin. I blogged about it once because I love thinking about that rolling pin. And Mary and I were just talking about that. How many pies, how many people, how many little family members that mothers or grandmothers or fathers, I don't want to say that dads and grandpas don't bake pies either, so sorry. But whoever that was and how many people they made happy with that, and especially the real old ones that have been really used. My mom gave me her rolling pin when I got married, and I have it on a shelf now because I basically broke it. We figured it had like at least 12,000 pie crusts from me, let alone from my mom, but thank you so much.
I'll ask a question as well. I'm really moved by what I would describe as your authenticity, being exceptionally real with both the highs and the lows of owning a business and all the challenges of that. And I think it could be very easy because you're always, whenever I see you, you're always beautifully dressed and very well kept, and
oh, nice.
and you and it could come across, I think, as a sort of facade, but then you have this extremely authentic presence when you're talking and sharing about the highs and lows. And in a community like this of entrepreneurs, when people are asking how things are going, well, everything's going great, but you're talking about like both the highs and the lows. How important do you think is that authenticity, that realness to the success that you've had?
Oh, very important. I think, I'm not a very good actress, so, although I will say, when you're at the shop or when I'm not feeling well, the show goes on. So I can't be like, oh, I'm having a sad day today. It actually always brings me up seeing people and that they came all this way. I had a couple that came from Pennsylvania for breakfast, had lunch, and then had dinner, and took home a pie, and then went home. I was like, you are the coolest people, oh my gosh. But that they came, they have lots of choices, and I will never not cherish my customers for choosing us, and even when we make mistakes, I'm gonna make that better. It's not just it's a business, it's like my family, so it means a lot to me, and I think that's what works. And I'm working on, we have one more meeting with Food Network for my own show, which is another dream. Yay, we'll see. Again, it's what it is, what it is. The PBS shows have been wonderful with WKR, and we're gonna be doing another one with them. But thank you. I don't know how to be anyone else, so.
Well, thank you, Linda. Before we close things out here, what do you want to be remembered for?
Making a good pie, I think, is pretty important. Hopefully being a really good mother and wife and daughter and friend and business owner, being a good person to the world and contributing. We always, say the changing the world one pie at a time, and I love doing my pie it forwards and pray it forward, do a little pie and pray it forwards to people that are, I don't really put those on Facebook because I don't think that's really, sometimes we do, but I love making people feel happy, so maybe that's it.
I know I felt your warmth here tonight, and I think maybe the audience has too. Can you guys help me give her a round of applause, please?
Thank you.